You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 115. Noelle Floyd is nothing short of an equestrian media powerhouse. If you haven't heard of her, do me a favour, go to Google, type in Noelle Floyd, Noellefloyd, and just have a look at everything that she creates. I have been following Noelle and been a fan of her work for years and years, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share her with you. I know that she's perhaps not as popular in the UK as she is overseas, but I promise you, you will be hooked when you start following her and seeing what she gets up to. I hope you love this episode. I absolutely adored recording it. So today on the Small and Supercharged podcast, we are joined by Noelle Floyd, all the way from Whistler. So we're recording at very different time zones, but luckily it's the day for both of us. So that is a win. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to get to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you.
So tell us about you and about your journey, because where you are now with your business versus where it all started just as your business before, where you started with your passion for horses before that, it's quite a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of horsewomen, I've had lots of different chapters in my riding journey. So I know we actually started using that term on noellefloyd.com, talking about riding journey, because we really wanted to create space for talking about how, riders tend to go in and out of the sport throughout their life. They might compete and then not compete. So I think I find the riding world to allow, to be a space of a lot of evolution and a lot of sort of changeable ways in which we ride. So my story is no different. So you want me to share a little bit about like what my background is?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can obviously see how that transforms. So I was just thinking, I know you as Noelle Floyd and I know all the amazing things that you do, but now you've really evolved into this incredible platform, obviously the same name as your name, but helping to educate riders and teach them things all over the world. So I'd love to know the journey that you've taken to get to that point from your own background too.
Sure. Well, I mean, I was like every other riding girl. Like I was obsessed with horses from the point of being very small, and it was kind of that obsessive, like, getting made fun of at school for being a horsey girl. I was just that girl that like so many of us, I'm sure lots of people listening have been that girl of just being, or boy, being so passionate and being so sort of obsessed with everything to do with horses. So I did. I grew up in the city, so I actually rode in a really sort of small, really, really kind of it's a very down to earth community, funnily enough, actually, which is sort of unique given that it's in the city. But I grew up doing pony club. I tried eventing a little bit. I did. I mean, jumping horses from the beginning was like my love. Like I just, all I wanted to do was jump horses. I didn't really care how. I could go on a drag hunt or like a pretend fox hunt. I could try eventing. I could jump around in pony club. I didn't really care. I just wanted to be on a horse. And I sort of was probably indicative of a child who, like, my family wasn't in a position to get me horses really early on. I think I was able to, my family was able to put some money together and buy me my first horse when I was 16. So I had been riding for quite a number of years before that. So I was that classic kid who learned that I had to work really hard in order to do something that I loved. So I had to, so I had jobs in riding camps at 13. I was mucking stalls at 13. I was working, like on a 5-to-1 ratio for how much you're riding versus how much you're working, because that was sort of the way in which I could afford to lease a horse or get lessons. So I think one of the things that I try to always emphasize anytime I talk about my journey so far has been that riding horses, or being in horse sport, or being in the horse world, however it is that you are involved in horses, I think for me, it taught me a ton about hard work, about truly like, and I mean, I don't know if anyone listening is like this, but I mean, I was the kid that didn't need my parents to wake me up at 6 a.m. Like, I was so excited to be part of this world and have such a passion that you didn't have to get me up in the mornings on the weekends or anything. I was just so enthusiastic to be a part of it. So, but I worked a lot, and then I had my first horse at 16. And then I was able to graduate to a little bit more advanced program for hunters, jumpers, and equitation, which is very popular over here in Canada and the States. And I sort of went through a little bit the gradual ranks there. So did the hunters, did the equitation, and then started doing some of the sort of lower to mid-level amateur owner jumpers. And so I was able to have a really cool experience with Bobby Reber. She's like quite a notable hunter, jumper, equitation coach here. But I mean, it's like trying to summarize it so that it's not a long yarn, as you guys would say, like a long, because it can be just, it's such a long story to share about when you start riding to when you get to, like, I'm 33 now. But I mean, basically I went to New Zealand. I went to New Zealand for university and for business school. I rode over there. I learned a ton about riding over there. I learned so much actually about horsemanship because I'd been in such a structure, like such a typical North American structure program. I'd never gone to a horse show without a trainer. I'd never had to build out like a young horse program on my own. I kind of didn't really know what I was doing, but I mean, in classic Kiwi fashion, I just kind of learned as I went. I mean, I learned a lot about kind of learning on the fly a bit. And I was lucky. I was able to kind of get some help from, like, Greg Best is down there. I got to meet some Katie McVean's based down there. There's a really, really, and similar to Europe, there's a very kind of helpful community. That's something, and it's nothing against the North American culture. It's just the riding world in North America is much more, I'm part of my barn, you're part of your barn, and like we might hang out if our trainers are friends, but like you're much more insular in the program that you're in. In New Zealand, that is not the case. Everyone's like helping each other out, setting jumps for each other in the warm-up ring. Like, it's a very kind of, it's a much different experience culturally. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the first time that I got a taste for that kind of community feel, like that real, like I'm doing the same thing as you're doing, but I don't really, I mean, I'm a little bit stumped as to how to fix this problem with my horse here. Or I'm kind of working with this 6-year-old, Greg, do you have any ideas? I really want to kind of develop his back end a little bit more over the oxers, or I want to kind of just get him a little bit more comfortable through combinations. And people were just so keen to like give their thoughts and insight and watch you. And it really set me up to when I went to Europe. Because it really, I kind of was introduced to this idea of there being more peer-to-peer help, let's say, right? And to learn from your peers, not just to learn from your superiors or your trainers or your coaches, but the idea that you can actually learn a lot from those around you, and you can actually sit and watch some of your friends and then be like, oh, interesting, like I would have actually, I would have taken a different angle on that line, or I would have put a 6 in there instead of a 5, and just really interesting. It got me, and I don't know if anyone else who's listening feels like this, but I actually came to the critical thinking party, as I say, about my riding late. I wasn't a very critical thinking. I was kind of someone who just did. I was very coachable. My trainer would say, do this, don't do it like this, don't do it like this. Lots of talking, not a lot of critical thinking. from my part. And so being in Europe, and I was riding for a gentleman by the name of Mark Van Dyke. He does a lot of work with Stefan Conter. And I was like bottom of the rung rider. Like I got over there and I kind of managed to sweet talk my way into getting a riding position at his barn. I was the at-home rider. I was certainly not the show rider. I was never good enough to do that right out of the gate. And had a lot to learn, but I was very keen, and I was very keen to learn, and I was very keen to work hard. And so that's always sort of been my, I think that's always been a bit of my shtick. Like whatever I make up in, like whatever I lack in maybe natural talent, I make up for in hard work and enthusiasm.
I love
So,
that.
and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. You know, I think I would say I'm a classic entrepreneur in that I'm a jack of all trades. I'm a master of none. I'm not a particularly gifted rider. I'm not a particularly amazing at finance or economics. This is what I studied. I studied economics at university. And I was certainly not the best student there. I'm not the best editor. I have now a whole editorial, like I have my editorial team, and everyone on my team is better at the roles that they basically filled, that I created in the company, than I am. And that's, I mean, I know a lot of entrepreneurs like that. You know, we're kind of not really.
I'm sure Gary V has, and Gary Vaynerchuk has got something about
Yes,
you hiring
yeah,
people smarter than you.
absolutely.
I love.
You 100% want to fill all of your, you can call them weaknesses or your inabilities, or you want to fill a room with people who are so much better at so many other things than you are.
It allows you to then take the overall view and look at the whole picture and develop different things, but having a kind of limit on the tech or the way to do it, or, you know, knowing that it can be done, that you've got the right people there to support you.
Absolutely. Exactly. That's, I mean, I think that I've always been able to sort of step away and watch. Not when I was a teenager, and certainly not when I was a young adult. I really obsessed over the little things, and I didn't, I think, achieve a really wider, more holistic perspective until was about a year away from starting the blog. And I started watching and I started thinking, oh, that's so interesting, you know, that I can be down here at the Sunshine Tour, you know, disclaimer, knowing, like, really not having a clue what I was doing. Like, really, I had a bunch of young horses there for an English owner, actually. And I kind of knew some stuff, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I made friends. And again, because of the insular aspect to North American riding culture, back then, I was able to sort of develop this really natural friendship with John Whitaker. And it was watching John and hearing John, and him telling stories about how he started. And, you know, it wasn't like, I didn't grow up in England. I didn't know how big of a deal John was. I just thought he was a really nice guy who had really, actually, you know, because he's not always super chatty, but when he's chatty, he is an amazing storyteller. And it was actually him, Rob, his son, a gentleman by the name of Rob McGuire. He's a friend of Rob's, and just like, there was this really friendly group of there, actually a lot of them were guys, but they just were really great at telling stories, and they were really great at enriching at the end of a really, for me, it was like really hard days. You know, I was really learning a lot, falling on my face, being very comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I really appreciated the lightheartedness that they took, and their perspective on the sport, and the kind of laughs that they would have at the end of the day. And I thought, gosh, we don't have this. Like, we really don't have this kind of this beautiful storytelling ability in North America. We're always talking about the results, or we're talking about you know, someone's barn, or I had never been enriched in these kind of beautiful stories. And they don't have to be old stories, they can be current stories. But I just felt there was a real lacking in passing on knowledge through storytelling. It's something we've been doing for millennia, but well, thousands of years, not millennia, but we've been doing it for, you know, a long time as human beings. And I felt like the riding world kind of didn't really, or at least from a North American perspective, I know Horse and Hound, and there's been some tremendous platforms in Europe and in the UK. But in North America, there just wasn't that kind of translation from what was happening in Europe to what was happening in North America. So that was truly how the beginning of the blog began, was this idea that, you know, I didn't know all these things. There's so many things that I didn't know when I came over to Europe. And how cool would it be if I had known those things? Yeah. And so like many businesses, the birth of the blog really was about filling a void that I felt needed to be filled.
So when did because your blog actually started in Brussels, didn't it? With you. Yes, I've got the right place. And it was obviously it's evolved massively now, but when you started the blog, was it very much because of these experiences you'd had in North America, then obviously they did things completely differently in New Zealand, and then differently again on the continent, and then obviously you got to hang out with some of the great British show jumpers out there, that again, all those different perspectives, and you're thinking, well, actually, this is so different and so diverse. How can I create something? So how did that journey go?
Well, as in, how could I create, what do you mean?
So did you just sort of think, there's no one telling this? So I know that, you know, the magazines that you've referenced are incredible magazines, and they do have beautiful features in, but your blog was always different to that, wasn't it? It always had. So how did you decide on that?
Well, I think when I was lucky, I started the blog around the time that a lot of people were starting blogs in the mainstream, like in the mainstream industries. So I took my lead from a little bit from an inspiration from a few things that I was seeing that was happening outside the sport. But it was a lot about having a very approachable, what we term, it's something I've termed in the business for a long time for everyone who works with me. It's called friendly, quote unquote, friendly tone. I wanted it to be like I was writing to you. I didn't want it to feel like I was writing in this formal way. And formality has been something I've always gone against. I find the formality around writing something I don't really subscribe to. And it's the informality that I think creates much more space for open learning. It creates the space for true, you know, genuine connection. I thought the kind of, I always just pretended that the formality didn't exist. And it was actually how I was able to generate and develop very good friendships with what some people would, from a lot of the world, consider to be these kind of big icons. But they're still just human beings, and they still have wonderful stories to tell, but you have to push past the formality to get into connect with the human being. Yeah. And so I was very interested in developing a blog that had a down-to-earth tone, that had a very informal tone, and that we were talking about things in a way that, you know, kind of created that feeling of like, oh, me too, that kind of feeling. Like before Me Too was a movement, I wanted, you know, and it's a movement for a very different thing. I really appreciate that feeling that you get when you read something about someone. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's me as well. Like I get that feeling also. And so I think I felt that did not exist in the writing world. And I felt a lot of people, I was very much like this, that I went through my writing, my youth as a writer, feeling very like, oh, this is just something that I have. This is like nerves at a horse show is just, which is so silly now. As a 33-year-old, I'm like, that's so ridiculous. But as a 16-year-old, that's not silly.
Oh, completely. Especially if your friends are really confident and really forward, really up for it. And you're there going, oh, you know, and as you say, when you realize that you're not alone, actually you instantly start to relax anyway, because you know that other people have this and they do incredible things. And I know over here, there are some absolutely top riders who talk about their nerves and their anxiety before competition, and actually them opening up about that and sharing it, like you said, in a friendly and informal way, makes everybody feel better. Everyone that's aspiring to improve themselves. And also when they do have a big win, you cheer them on all the more because you know how hard it's been for them.
Absolutely. It's the humanity of horse people that I'm so much more interested in being a part of than the, as a sport, we've have a history of, having all sorts of different celebrities and royal family members and all this kind of stuff. And it creates this kind of unattainable, crusty exterior. But in fact, when you speak and connect with all these people, they're just the same. Riders learn and are improving their whole lives. This is a lifelong thing that we're a part of. And I think riders have to experience some of the most humbling moments, because we're working with a huge animal. We're asking them to do incredible things. And often there are a lot of things lost in translation, and we're still learning. Human beings by no means are perfect horsemen. We're still learning a lot about horsemanship, and we're learning a lot about universal horsemanship. And that's where Equestrian Masterclass really comes in to play, is trying to create conversation around learning, around being open about the things that you're struggling with, feeling like there's a space that you can be a part of, that you can share your challenges, share your wins, all those things. It's very human, and it's very important, and it's an important part of developing yourself, not only as a person, but as a horseman. And it's an important chapter. And I'm really pleased that since I started the blog, I really saw a shift in the way editorial was being created, in the way video content was being created. And I mean, I've only ever wanted to authentically create products, or authentically create, anytime that I've been inauthentic, it's really come, backlash for me, and taught me that you have to put something out there in the world, or you have to develop a representation of what you want to leave. How do you want to contribute to the riding world? For me, that's the kind of question I always constantly ask. How do we want to change it for the better? Riders talking about mental health, riders talking about body image, riders like Danny Goldstein. Those are the conversations that need to happen. There's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect round. And you're only as good as your last day. And these are all really interesting elements that make equestrianism a really unique space, and all the more in need of open, kind of healthy conversation, and the removal of judgment, the encouragement of learning. And I think the celebration that riding is a very diverse space, that has lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds with lots of different goals. I'm very anti-amateur shaming. I think that was the thing that we saw a lot in the past, that amateurs somehow are like this icky thing that that is part of the sport. And there's a very small percentage of people who ride that are professionals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that goes the same for a lot of sports. Definitely. And so amateurs should be celebrated. They're people who are participating in the sport for the pure love of it, and so that's again, it's all those very distinct messages that have sort of developed under the Noelle Floyd banner. And that has been very much a gradual sort of evolution. That was not something that I started the blog knowing. These are things that some of them were original and from the beginning, and then some have developed over time.
So you started off with the blog, and I know when I was looking at the blog when it was just a blog, the imagery always struck me as beautiful, and the layout and the design. And then you progressed onto a magazine, didn't you? A printed publication, which made perfect sense with the beautiful imagery, which you do also have online, the kind of layout and how that all works together. So how did you move from the blog to the magazine? What made you go for it? And how did that, because the magazine isn't still published, is it? I know your business has evolved and changed, but how long was it out there, and why did you do it? And, how did that all work?
So for me, it was really simple. I was a digital platform. I'd been given a lot of support when I started. Like I started the blog, I think it was like June 9th or June 10th, 2012. I was given access to go and report in Aachen. And I thought that would never happen. Like, I was like, I'm this nobody blogger. Like, I was amazed. But I was, over the first year or 18 months, I was very much a digital platform. And I was receiving a lot of support from the riding community, which I really appreciated. And I think, I still do a shout out to Edith at Aachen, because she like let me in right at the beginning. And I think I had published maybe like 20 or 25 articles. Like, I was sitting next to all sorts of people who had, been doing this for years and years and years. And I think I knew that I knew that I would need to eventually probably develop a physical manifestation of my brand.
Sure.
To give my platform legitimacy. So I literally talked to a few people who had made magazines, and I was like, all right, tell me what I have to do. So, I mean, it's really, I mean, for anyone who wants to start a magazine, I mean, print is a bit of a dying space, unfortunately. So I don't know if I would want to be on record encouraging you to create a magazine, but I think creating a magazine is not actually too complicated. It really just requires a little bit of wrangling of cats. Like, you have to find a designer, you have to find the content, you have to understand what the purpose of your magazine is. You have to find a printer, you have to establish a work back schedule, you have to ensure your distribution. You have to secure advertising. It's just a lot. It's just a big shopping list of things that you need to secure. But if you are willing to tackle, every single problem and then solve it sequentially, then, you can generate a magazine. And so that's what I did. And I mean, and sure enough, I had this hunch that if I created a magazine, that I might start getting referenced in external, in other platforms, with other businesses.
Sure.
If I had created if I had kind of graduated to the next level as a platform and started publishing a magazine, that I might sort of really see the kind of legitimacy represented by being referenced elsewhere. And sure enough, after the first issue, FEI was quoting my platform. Other media sources were quoting my platform. I had I think there were a couple of kind of bigger news situations that happened in the writing world, and I had New York Times call me and ask my opinion about stuff. That was because I had I do believe that, and that was my intention with the magazine, was to sort of bring the readership, bring my brand and my platform into people's homes, and do so with a product that they were going to be proud to put on their coffee table. I always said to my designer, I wanted the magazine to look like more like a Vogue and a Vanity Fair than anything anyone had ever seen in the writing world before. Yeah. And so that's how the magazine kind of became a thing.
And how long did you do the magazine for?
4 years. I think we printed, I've got the last issue here was with Laura Graves. I think it was our 15th issue or 16th issue. So we printed quarterly. So we printed seasonally. I just thought, we'd print to the seasons. I by no means printed a magazine every month. And big shout out to everyone who does that. I think that's an incredible, to print and to issue out 12 magazines a year. I mean, just knowing all the work that went into our quarterly one, I mean, I give a massive, I really bow down to everyone who does monthly magazines, because it's a ton of work.
Did you envisage it ending after 4 magazines because you felt that you'd perhaps be doing your kind of next evolution or next progression then? Or were you, how did the ending go? Is it because you had another project coming through?
Oh no, I didn't think the magazine would kind of go forever.
Sure.
I think it was very much a stepping stone, and it was a really wonderful exercise. And I was able to shoot some of the covers myself. I was able to connect with some incredible creatives, shoot some covers that I'm actually, like this one is my favorite of all time. To be able to shoot Vallegro like that.
I watched that video today. I watched that today.
This is something, like I'll be an old woman. And I mean, to be able to, that horse really is like everything that as a child you love about horses and horse sport and equestrianism, or whatever term you want to use. I mean, that Blueberry Vallegro, however you call him, like he is just everything about horses that I love. He's an incredible animal. He's not even just an incredible horse. He's an incredible animal. He's just an amazing, he's just such a unique spirit. And so to be able to, I'm really like, I have a lot of gratitude to be able to have put something like this out in the world, because I'd be an old woman and I'll look at it and I'll think, yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm pretty happy about that, So, but I didn't think that the magazine would be a forever thing. I thought the magazine would be, only because I saw a lot of magazines stopping advertising. Magazines are something that require advertising dollars to kind of make sense financially. And I think I saw a lot of advertising bleeding into digital and kind of coming away from print, which makes sense because digital is much more relevant and kind of quick. And this day and age, something you read last week is like out of date, right? And magazines work on typically on a 20 to 30 day cycling period. So it was always going to be, I always wanted to kind of bring it back to digital. And we actually stopped the magazine so that we can launch a podcast, which is something we're going to be launching this year.
Oh, that's
because, a podcast is more accessible to everyone, and riders spend a lot of time in their car commuting. So we wanted to give them storytelling, like the truth form, like, from in the form that I kind of drew inspiration from in the beginning. And then now we can create a podcast that kind of does that while you're driving in verbal form, which I think is an important avenue to go down.
And did you find through doing the magazine as well, you were able to really strengthen those connections with a lot of riders? I mean, the picture, so you can't see this because it's a podcast, but the cover that Noelle just showed me was the most beautiful image of Vallegro. And there is a video on, it might be your YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel.
Of that shoot. And it's beautiful. And honestly, if there's ever a horse that seemed to be enjoying a photo shoot, I think that's it.
Oh, he loved every second of it.
So lovely. But did you also find that through doing the magazine, you were able to strengthen your relationship with people like Carl, Charlotte, Alan, and obviously lots of other riders as well, because you were able to give them something different to actually promote their brand as much as something that your readers wanted to know about?
Yeah, I think when we published, like when we put Kent Farrington on the cover, that was really unique. We got to kind of, and actually, I had developed a friendship with him before, but going through the magazine article exercise, the same with Tiffany Foster, I think a lot of riders like that appreciated the way we were telling their story and what we were really focusing on. Again, focusing on the human aspects of who they are. Because you can only, until you start, again, going into like the education side of things, you can only really talk about their horses, their results for so long. And it gets quite stale quite quickly. And then again, we're not interested in, I think for me, it's not, Kent Farrington or Charlotte Dujardin. It's not their results per se that make them interesting to me. It's their story that makes them interesting. It's the way that they have shaped their narrative in the riding world. It's how they approach riding. It's what type of horseman are they? Why do they choose to be like that? What are the life moments that brought them there?
Definitely.
That's so much more interesting to me than, how well they did at their last Grand Prix or their last horse show. And it's important to them and it's important to their sponsors. But from a storytelling point of view, from a community building point of view to the amateurs out in the world, to all the everyday equestrians, their results don't make a difference in everyone else's lives. What does make a difference is the learnings that they've been able to acquire through their unique journey, and how we can share that. That's how everybody else can be enriched by their experience.
I think as well, the kind of the quirks and the stories along the way are very inspiring. So I know I'm going to probably horribly butcher this story, but I'm going to run with it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Carl's got a very large horse, Nip Tuck, aka Barney, and I'm sure I read somewhere that he doesn't like being stabled, much prefers being out in the field.
Probably. I mean, Carl really likes all his horses to be turned out quite a lot.
And I'm sure it was that really, I think the horse might go out at night and, be turned out as much as possible. And for someone who is just a normal rider, the fact that actually, if you have a horse that lives out, you can still do really good things with it. And I know it sounds silly, but we think of these very expensive, incredible horses being kind of in their stables all the time. And I thought hearing that was just so lovely. And then he also posted a picture when Barney had spooked at something and taken a wall out. And again, although it's obviously not ideal that the horse has taken the wall down, it was so relatable, because we've all had those things when our horses have done something just stupid. Yeah. And we've just kind of gone, oh, really? This could only happen to me. And then you see like Carl Hester on an Olympic horse having the same thing happen.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love hearing about what goes on behind. Obviously, Carl and Charlotte are brilliant examples where the story of how they got into riding, how they got into riding at all, let alone, and again, I'm butchered another story, pretty sure Carl started on a donkey.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you talk to people, a lot of top riders started like, there are lots of people who've had tremendous privilege in how they've started riding, and the riding world is definitely filled with lots of people like that. There's also lots of people who started really humbly, and just like you and me.
Yeah. And
I think the stories like Carl sharing how he turns out Nip Tuck, and how, I mean, I really appreciated when we did that inside his stable video with him and just hung out with them for a few days. I really appreciate that Carl just, like, he kind of does what the horses need. Like, he's just kind of listens to what that was very much my impression was, well, this horse likes to do this, and so this is his program. And this is something that he wants. And they kind of like give a little bit of, agency to the horses to sort of express what they would appreciate, and how they can create a space for their horses to do their best work, and kind of listen, and that's what horse people need to be very good at, is listening to horses, listening to other people, which is a really ironic thing to say as I'm blabbing on this podcast. And no, but I mean, but I love to chat. Everyone knows that. Anyone who knows me who's listening to this podcast knows I love to talk. But I think that is kind of what brings it all back to why storytelling and sharing elements of what top riders do. And I think, again, it's very relevant. It's very much wasn't the case 20 years ago. It's very much indicative of the internet, social media, because again, I'm someone who I find social media can be very poisonous, but I also think social media can be incredibly valuable. I think it's been amazing during this global pandemic to allow and foster a lot of community and connection. And I think the same goes for the riding world, where we're no different. I think we've been able to see beautiful things come of through social media. And I think that that's kind of what's unique about being a rider in this day and age versus 30, 40, 50 years ago, is that you can read something or see a video, or Scott Brash can be like, okay, this is something a horse is doing, this is something that I'm going to do, I'm going to just show it to you on IGTV Live. Yeah, we're like, oh wow, like it's so attainable. And that's because it is attainable. all the restrictions that we come across in life, all the barriers, they're just imaginary. They're in our minds. They're not actually real.
And I love the idea as well. You're saying, the actual social media gets a lot of stick, doesn't it? Because there is a lot of negativity on there. And as you say, it can be a very toxic environment, but there is a huge amount of good there as well. If you're very careful on who you follow, who you pay attention to, what you say, and things like that, it can be an incredible resource that will allows us to see things we wouldn't normally see. You wouldn't normally see, as you say, Scott Bratch showing what the horse is doing at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how great is it that we can see that?
Exactly. And that's a little bit, as social media can encourage you to go down a route of comparison and being not enough and feeling inadequate and kind of living vicariously through other people. That's one avenue you can go down. There's another avenue you can go down, which is inspiration, education, understanding, connection, generating, building a community around something that either a non-for-profit you're doing or a business you're doing or a product you believe in. Expression, all those things are really important. Freedom of speech, all those things are really important. And so you can choose, we have a lot of choice, more than we ever have before. So you have to choose how you use social media. And I think it has to be a conscious effort now more than ever. Yeah. You can't be complacent, because that's when I think you start to kind of experience the more negative aspects of that, of social media.
I think sometimes we don't always realize it's happening until you've gone, as you say, it has to be a conscious choice, because you realize you're absorbing things, you're taking things in that actually are changing perhaps your mindset, your views on things, and not in a good way, not in a positive way. And yeah, I think, as you say, it's got to be a conscious effort to follow the accounts that inspire you, not the ones who whine and moan, and put others down. Just don't get involved with that. Follow the ones that inspire you and you're excited to open up your phone and see what's going on that day, or look at beautiful imagery, or whatever works for you.
Yeah, and I think it's about giving attention. In social media, attention is power. So what are you giving power to? Are you giving power to someone who is encouraging strong messages of equality or diversity or learning or education or accessibility? Or are you giving power to platforms that promote negativity, judgment, shaming, those kind of things? And I think, being an animal person, I myself, in my own personal experience with social media, I actually have to really consciously manage what how I interact on social media and what I do and what I say. And because I'm a big animal welfare advocate, and so I do follow, because I don't want to have my head in the sand. And that's kind of the difficult thing, is you want to inform yourself, but you don't want to have your head in the sand, but at the same time, you don't need to be constantly bombarded with all the awful things that are happening in the world. And so it's about balance. And I always say my mom is a big promoter of balance and trying to find, constantly coming back to your equilibrium and trying to find a balance between being informed and then being like depressed about the way the world is and the things that we cannot change today. So it's about balance. And I think we have to, I personally, I manage the amount of time I spend on social media. I actually allocate time in the day during my work day to be part of social media for a very set amount of time. And then the rest of the time I leave it.
That's interesting. And obviously you've got a lot of, on your business side of things as well, you've got a really, really good following on social media, and that's still how you manage it for that as well.
No, we have Ali Justin is our social media director. So I actually don't handle, I go in and I have a big say in our social media strategy and what we're saying in the post, and every now and then I'll do a post, but Ali is our director of social media. So she handles the social media account, but she herself, that's her work, but she will herself manage it. I think Ali does an amazing job of creating, giving social media the space and not getting too caught in to all the messaging, because we do get a ton of messages. And she does a really good job at responding really quickly to everyone, but at the same time not letting it kind of dictate her entire life.
That's a problem as well. If you've got an account the size that yours is, or just one that you get a lot of DMs, a lot of comments on, you can find yourself spending a massive amount of time in the DMs, and not always with people who are necessarily DMing you for a good reason. And actually then you can take your eye off the ball slightly when it comes to actually the content you're creating and the way you can inspire, educate, inform, and do all the things that you're using the platform to do.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult one. And when you said about balance, I think that's a really good point. And I think as well, something I'm noticing, because we're recording this during the coronavirus pandemic, but there's so much misinformation out there. And making sure you get your information from the correct sources, as in not the people who are trying to spin things to get clicks or sell things, as in, you know, sell whatever ads, newspapers, magazines, whatever. Actually, the source of the information, it's still depressing and worrying, but at least you know it's not got a slant or a twist on it.
Well, and that's where I think I go back to critical thinking. It's just very important that we actively participate in critical thinking all the time. And that's not to say that when you read something you think, oh, that's all lies, but to understand and to constantly question what the motivation is behind an article, what the motivation is behind a leadership, what is the motivation behind someone who's informing you on the current climate, and that is more important than ever. What is the motivation? What is the premise? Who is speaking? What is their expertise? What is their background? I think that's, you know, more important than ever for us to actively engage in critical thinking all the time. And it's exhausting. You know, I mean, for anyone listening who's like, oh yeah, okay, Noelle, like that's a lot of work to constantly do that. And that's why you have to, I think it's about trying to find balance, is when you're informing yourself on what's going on around the world, what the latest techniques are for something to do with your horse, what's the latest and greatest theories on nutrition, for example, how you should be handling a particular behavioral issue you're having with your horse, all those things. Yes, it's exhausting having to constantly participate in critical thinking, but I think in the end, if you take your time, and again, we're very focused on quick results, and I think that has created a bit of a bad situation in riding, because there's nothing about horses and horse sport that is a quick fix. Definitely. And any quick fix is not a fix. It's just a Band-Aid. And so I think kind of removing ourselves from that way of thinking, and the way that modern society is encouraging us to really think about things as quick and fast, and learn how to be a teacher in 7 weeks, and become a life coach in 2 hours, and all this kind of ridiculous marketing of, and I think they're all just sort of clickbaity businesses. I think anything worthwhile doing takes time to do it. Definitely. You know, it takes patience and hard work and dedication. And so, you know, if it is something quick and Band-Aidy that you're doing, I would then, you know, I would really implore you to question what the actual result will be, because I don't think it'll be as satisfying as you might think.
And actually that leads us really beautifully onto where your business is now, and your amazing online platform, which is providing an incredible array of education, inspiration from leading riders and trainers and more across the world. So, which is amazing. And it is, I'm going to put the links in the show notes, but you must go and have a look. It's also, the videography is just beautiful. I watched again today with Boyd and his yard and his horses, and the filming was just stunning. So can you tell us a bit about your amazing platform?
So Equestrian Masterclass was, you know, one of those beautiful evolutions that we took from our relationships with the top trainers and top riders in the world, and our audience, and something that we saw as a void. You know, we thought, oh, you know, wouldn't this be a wonderful opportunity to take all the relationships and the strong friendships that we have with these amazing riders, these people who have a wealth of knowledge, and kind of take it to the next level. And so that was how Equestrian Masterclass was born. It was the idea that we can actually create accessible online equestrian education for everyone. There is no reason why someone, you know, a young rider halfway across the world can't learn from Ian Miller or Tick Maynard or Missy Clark or Archie Cox. There's no reason why, you know, we're going to be filming with Rich Fellers this year, Gail Greeno, Eddie Mackin. Like, you know, these are big, incredibly talented people, big names who have a ton of experience, and they want, you know, they have a passion in education and they want to pass it on. And why not, you know, use the internet, use digital platforms like we work through Kajabi, which is an online education platform. Why not use these tools that we have available to us now to allow for more accessibility in a space that has otherwise had quite a high barrier to entry, especially with learning. You know, traditionally, the best trainers in the world have only been able to teach a very select few riders. Well, you know, we can change that. We can actually bring the best people and the best trainers in the sport to you on your sofa, and you can learn not only while you're at the barn, but when you're at home. And that, you know, that really inspired us to take all the resources that we have and allocate all of our attention into developing that.
And it's not just riding, is it? You have got other classes on there as well, not just as in physically how you're going to get your horse to jump better or things like that.
No, we have horsemanship. I mean, we have we've actually broken down our library to be sort of practical aspects that are sport related. So like Missy Clark teaches recognizing a distance and breaks down the parameters behind what it is when you see in quotations, and she doesn't like to use that word. So what happens when you recognize the distance that you're going to jump on a jump? You have Ian who teaches fundamentals of jumping, and then you have Tick Maynard who goes deep into horse behavior and really problem solving horse behavior, and then you have mental coaching. So we take in we've worked with Annette Padarakis, Tanya Johnson. We're going to be releasing our next mental coach or mental training masterclass with Dr. Jenny Susser, all about fear. So, you know, like we talk about the diversity of within riding, there's a huge diversity of different avenues in which you can learn and how you are truly a whole horseman, I think, or horsewoman. I think to be a good horseman or horsewoman is both things in the saddle, those things you do and skills you generate and acquire in the saddle and out of the saddle. And that's really important. We're going to be, you know, the course that we release on Monday is actually with Max Corcoran, who's like a world-class groom. And the whole course is based around horse care for all the seasons. So it's 365 days of horse care and how you need to approach taking care of your horse in spring, fall, summer, and winter. So it's, you know, we're really trying to build a holistic approach to what it is to be a horseman or a horsewoman, and what it means to be your best version of yourself as a rider, and then how you can graduate to like the next level and be the best rider you can be. And that is different for everybody. And it's really important that we generate courses and we give people tools that allows them to graduate to their next level. It might be just taking better care of their horse. It might be being more knowledgeable about all aspects of horse care. It might be just getting a horse to load the trailer. Mm-hmm. It might be being able to refine your eye when you're jumping. It might be to do with getting the best out of the horse that you have. So, I mean, it's so many different. Being a good rider for someone it's different for every individual. And so it's really important for us to create a product, an Equestrian Masterclass, that really supports that notion.
No, definitely. And in terms of the customers you get, the subscribers to the membership, obviously they're all over the world. Are they all different ages? Are they all different disciplines? What kind of mix have you got?
A lot of them are adult amateurs. We have a lot of predominantly our customer base at the moment is American. So we have a lot of customers in America. We have customers in Canada, and a big shout out to people who are listening from the UK. We're really starting to build a very dedicated group of customers in the UK, members.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really call them customers, we call them members.
Members, yeah.
So we really want to, the UK is a community of riders that I've always felt very connected to, and I would really love to continue to build a library that would be interesting for UK riders. So we're going to be really looking next year to build out courses with a lot of riders that UK riders specifically would be quite interested in. So we're going to be doing a lot of we're planning some production in the UK with some of your favorite riders out there. So
oh wow,
yeah,
that'll be a very exciting one to look at as well. So along your journey, along your kind of business journey, have there been any lows particularly, or things you've had to overcome before you can kind of move on? 'Cause I think we've all of our business journeys do have the kind of odd, very low point, and the odd, very high, and some very high points too, which is the next bit of the question. So we're not going to finish down. So what lows have you had?
Oh my God, tons. I mean, I've been doing this since 2012. I can assure you there's been many. I think, okay, I'm going to pick a couple because or else we'll be here all day. I think graduating to kind of going from a very popular blog to generating a really well thought out product was difficult. That was really challenging. I tried out a bunch of different things. We tried a shop platform, we tried a subscription box, and then we also tried Equestrian Masterclass. And I love to try something. I'm kind of one of those people who'll try anything once. But there's also a sort of a perfectionist in me. And there's been a lot of struggles that I can't do everything. I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that we couldn't do the shop platform, we couldn't do the subscription box, and we couldn't do online equestrian education all at the same time. And I think that would be probably one of the most relevant obstacles recently, was kind of accepting, you have to kind of accept, like, you have to kind of pick your horse. You can use that analogy. You have to pick the horse that you want to have in the race. And that for me was, equestrian education, online equestrian education. But, it's difficult to sometimes pick. You kind of think, oh, well, we could do, I really wanted to create a platform that when we launched the shop platform, I was like, oh, but we could do so much for body image in the riding world. And we could, I feel like, I was like, that's an avenue I really want to go down. And then the subscription box was really fun because we were able to like tap into all sorts of different riders from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I've always been really interested in like the wider community. But I think that was a really big obstacle, is and accepting sort of, there were people who were disappointed that we couldn't continue a shop, or we couldn't continue with the subscription box. So kind of accepting and talking to people on social media or through our customer service email that, people were really disappointed. And I don't like to disappoint people. I think that's something, I've had to learn to be better at, but I'm not very good at it. I would say that that's probably one of the most recent obstacles, is you had to kind of accept. You do, and you really do have to do that as an entrepreneur. You have to really accept defeat. You have to be very honest when you're not doing something well. You have to kind of, you really have to, I think one of the best tools you can have to starting a business or being an entrepreneur is just being very honest with yourself about, why are you doing this? What is the motivation behind it? I've never wanted to just create business for the sake of creating business. And I've done that every now and then in my journey. And I've always fallen a bit on my face, is when you kind of start just wanting to do something for the sake of making money. Or, that will come. That's something that, and there are going to be entrepreneurs that are listening to this that don't agree with me. It's just a choice of kind of the approach you take in business and in generating product or developing product. I personally believe that, creating business for the sake of business isn't good business. I think if you don't have a mission statement, if you don't have a true ethos as to why you're doing what you're doing, and it has to be above and beyond making money. It has to be about creating an impact and generating a community, and it has to be more than just your profit margin. I know that there are lots of really impressive businesses out there that have just been a byproduct of, business for the sake of business. I also think that's also the reason why we are, as a global community, as a species, we are in a really sticky, awkward place where there's lots of businesses out there that also do a lot of damage, and they make a lot of people a lot of money. I think consciously you want to think about the type of why you're doing what you're doing.
Sure.
And because then if you believe very deeply in what you're doing, then you can work 18-hour days, 7 days a week if necessary.
And you can promote it better as well, can't you? If you believe in it passionately.
You have to be able to, and that's one thing I would say is anytime that I've, I think, not stuck to my why, and be very connected to your why. And there are times in this 8 years of doing this that I've kind of become disjointed from my why. Whether it was like when we had our digital media agency and we were consulting a lot of riders, there's a fine balance between surviving as a business and making money and generating what I would consider like good service to your clients. And so I think, and anyone in the riding world probably has tackled that. Anyone who works in the riding world will have been confronted with that dilemma many, many times, and I think it's, in the end of the day, I've come to learn that if you can't sleep at night with the decision that you've made, then maybe go back to the drawing board as to how you're going to confront that situation or how you're going to solve that problem. I think you have to be able to speak authentically to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you can't, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
No, that makes perfect sense. And what have been the kind of any particular high or pinch me moment along your journey when you kind of thought, wow, I can't believe I just did that, or this has been an absolute dream for me forever?
There's lots of I can't believe I just did that moment. Like when I shot Scott was very patient. When we shot Scott Brash for the cover of the magazine, I did it myself because I didn't have the budget to hire a big photographer to do it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I knew enough about photography to kind of get away with a lot, and that's really that's a very kind of consistent theme in the beginning of, I knew enough to get away with stuff, but probably not enough to be like a professional in anything. So I think the first time I shot one of the covers of our magazine, I definitely was like, I can't believe I got away with that. And I actually got photos we can use. That was pretty funny. I think the first time when I got my first investor in 2018, that was definitely a pinch me moment. That was like when I got to graduate from being kind of a grassroots business built from blood, sweat, and tears to a business that was able to actually do some big things and make some sort of big ripples. That was a real pinch me moment for sure.
That's really cool. And what can we expect? What's coming in the future that you can possibly tell us about? I mean, we obviously need to watch this space, and from a UK point of view, it sounds incredibly exciting in the next year or so. But what have you got in the pipeline that you can share?
So we are still committed this year, despite the global pandemic that's taking place. We're still committed to producing a masterclass course every month. So we're releasing some very exciting equestrian masterclass courses with some really big names this year, which we're very excited about. We are going to be launching a podcast this year, which we're very excited about. And we are going to be doing some pretty exciting stuff on YouTube. So I can't give away too much, but YouTube is something we've kind of been consistent with, but I've really wanted to kind of pump a lot more resources into generating some really unique content on YouTube. So that's going to be something that everyone can expect this year, and definitely next year. 2021, like 2020 is big for us. 2021 is going to be even bigger. So I'm really excited about just how much digital content we're going to have out in the world by the end of this year. And I'm really proud of kind of the why behind all of what we're doing. And, for all of those who are listening, who are in the UK, which I think is quite a few of you, we're really got our eyes on you guys. And I want you to feel that we very much are aware of, we're trying to learn a lot more about who you are, what type of riders you want to learn from, who you want to be equestrian masterclass instructors. And we really want to see more membership signups from UK riders. And so we are going to be really, really setting our sights on that. So the UK is a community of riders we're really passionate about and interested in. But we also are aware of how unique you guys are. So we're not taking that lightly. We're going to be doing our homework and making sure that we're delivering a lot of value for you.
So tell us everywhere where people can find you, because we need to know about YouTube. We need your YouTube. We need your Instagram, because it's just beautiful, talking about inspiring places. You go, well, I obviously follow Noelle Floyd anyway. And whenever I look at it, I go, oh, look, it's just beautiful. So tell us all the places we can find you.
Okay, well, it's really easy. You can literally find us everywhere, whether it be YouTube, online, on the internet, Facebook, Instagram. If you type in Noelle Floyd, which is Noelle Floyd, Floyd. But you can also find us by typing in Equestrian Masterclass. So you can actually find us on our website, www.noellefloyd.com and www.equestrianmasterclass.com. We're searchable on both those terms. You can find us on YouTube under Noelle Floyd, and on Instagram and Facebook as well, and Twitter. So we're everywhere. And Pinterest. Oh, and Pinterest is something we've seen a lot of. We've seen a lot of consistent growth in Pinterest. So if you want to follow some really cool quotes from our masterclass instructors, as well as some envious stables setups and stuff like that, you can also follow us on Pinterest.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for chatting to me. I've loved it.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.